Hello, dear friend. Today we will discuss the sound of the mix in the genre deathcore. Let's listen a little to the final result and start with the bass guitar. Was based on my bass library. On this track it worked in auto mode. The priority velocity was on the value 110. The free version of the bass is available for viewing by clicking on the link in the description. Now let's go to mixing. The first thing I did was use a wonderful plugin from Arturia. Having tuned the tone, I thought it sounded too dirty, so before he used EQ to clear the spectrum of excessive frequencies, I mainly attenuated those frequencies that unprofitably pass through the gain path. The tone is assembled, now it remains to fill and seat in the mix. With the help of Saturn, saturate the signal and reduce the volume of the mid-range. The broken tube mode itself is very heavy, so we don't make it too loud, although you can also raise the gain. The basic fundamental root frequency is raised by rebass from waves. Pro Q, we place the bass in the mix. The main work is done with middle frequencies. Additionally, Pro MB control lower frequencies and attack so that the instrument does not fall out of mix. At this stage the work with the bass is finished. Left only sidechain compression and cleansing of spectrum with Soothe from kick. It's time for guitars. Unfortunately, I can't say what was used, but they look like a series of 7-string shreddage guitars. First thing, I used gate to remove the extra noise. I don't recommend doing that, better to delete them manually. For overloading was used plow from Tse. Amp setting and cabinet pulse you can see on the screen. Further is forming guitar tone. There was a lot of frequency correction. It could be avoided by picking the cabinet pulse more carefully. But we have what we have. You can imagine that the guitar was recorded in the studio through a microphone and therefore it needs to be formed further. Having finished the initial correction, I decided to saturate the signal. Then used Pro MB to control palm mute. Note that stereo link is disabled. This will allow the left and right guitar signal to be processed independently, which in theory gives us stereo amplification. Then make the signal more complete and compress it further with a distressor. From the guitar we need a stable sound wall that will hold at the same volume level. Additional frequency correction and integration of guitars into the mix. The work is done with all spectrum. Also made dynamic equalization to further stabilize the sound. With Soothe we remove the low frequency bursts. Note, work is also done with the stereo link disabled. The second Soothe pick up the unpleasant resonances. Saturate the signal with console emulation. This will smooth out the guitar tone and finally form it. After the sidechain compression from kick and snare, the last thing I decided to do is to further extend the guitar's pitch. I used the equalizer to change the frequency priority and used the stereo extender. Work with guitar rhythms is done. As for drums, used his library, which you can find there on the page Where and Bass. I raised the level of the room snare, and also increased the attack. Listen to how it sounds without processing. On the kick signal I clear low and high frequencies. Next the signal goes through the compressor in parallel mode. Using rebass makes the kick more massive. As you can see, no complex processing, everything is already formed. The snare signal needs to be freed of excessive low frequencies. In this genre where there is a fast batch, it can have a detrimental effect on the perception. Parallel compression and additional signal equalization are also used. As for the toms, they had a slight correction of the tone. Raised the bottom and removed the middle. On overheads cleaned high and made sidechain compression from kick and snare. Channel room has been processed by compressor, which mainly affect the snare. Further cleaned up the spectrum using EQ. Note the channel's levels. This is a very important thing. The next step is an additional processing group, which goes directly to the master section. Here's the parallel processing of the compressor, and also the reverberation. You can see the settings on the screen. The drum group treatment consists of a soothe pair. One controls lower frequencies, the other high, making cymbals softer. The overall signal compression and saturation is carried out by the console. We're done with the drums. As for the guitar solo, here is even easier. Use the same amplifier as on the rhythms of the guitars, with minimal changes. The signal goes into delay, after that into reverberation, which was on the drums and completes the processing of the equalization with dynamic triggering of the desired band. It's just in the processing of the master bus, too, everything is simple. I used the compressor in the mid-side mode to independently process the mono and stereo, also raised some levels on the volume, further slight frequency correction, saturation by the console from NLS, and also stereo expansion. finishes processing the limiter. Before it decided to put a plugin from Isotope, you can hear what he removes. On this I have everything. Hope you heard something new.